typically think of disruption as a bad thing. There's a lot of negativity around it. But the reality is that there's a lot of opportunity that come out of it. So whereas one might have fear of the unknown doesn't necessarily have to be a negative outcome. So I'm going to focus on two topics. One is demographics. Well, we may have too many people in the world and only a finite amount of resources on Earth to support, the living standards. If you look around the world right now, whether it's Chile, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, the United Kingdom, the United States, you're feeling a lot of social pressure in the air. Why is it that a certain part of the population seems to be getting more and more benefits, and yet another large part of the population is seeing less of it? What's it going to be like 10, 20, 30 years from now? But the reality is that there's something else happening under the surface, which is not really given a lot of attention, which is the role of technology. And technology, at the end of the day, is completely unknown in terms of its cost and its benefits. But through time, what we've seen is that human ingenuity really comes up with very interesting and novel ways to solve problems. We're seeing new materials come out. We're seeing new ideas to introduce new work opportunities for people. So we shouldn't be so pessimistic on that front. So this ties into my second topic, which is about the future of financial services. Same concept, a lot of negativity about banks. But again, technology really is forcing asset managers to come back to the one key thing that makes them successful, which is, how do I provide the best service to my client? How do I help my client? Probably the most important thing that it comes with, offering good service, which is trust. At the end of the day, people don't engage a company because, it has just great service. You first have to trust. And so when people are worried about disruption in the financial industry and that perhaps some of the biggest names that we know are going to go away, that may not necessarily be true, because you already have the advantage that people trust that they've been around for a long time, trust that they already have experience in providing services. So we shouldn't always think about disruption as something negative. I think disruption is a kind of like a double-edged dynamic. So on one hand, you have to go through some pain, you have to go through some sacrifice, but it's essential even in any relationship to go through troubled times to appreciate what you have and make whatever corrections are necessary. The trade war was a self-inflicted wound by the US administration. If you go back to the prior trade war period that we had, let's just think about it from a global perspective. That was the 1930s. And at that time, one could argue that that was the beginning of deglobalization. A lot of countries were looking at just their own benefits, looking at how to move forward from a very isolationist standpoint. And what we learned from the Great Depression and then followed by World War II was the importance of building alliances. And so where we find ourselves is in a situation where the US has, with the intent of trying to hurt China and push back on some of their, you could say, momentum, has found itself feeling the effects of those decisions. So where we are right now is a US administration that in some degree is at war with itself on whether they should continue being aggressive or not. And we're seeing that in the different headlines every day. Risk management from the Federal Reserve standpoint is what is happening with the US economy that we should be doing or we should be acknowledging, and then what kind of policy should we set to it. But the Federal Reserve can only control monetary policy, the level of short-term interest rates. And it's the bond market is suggesting that, we still have big problems because of what's happening with the trade war. And it's all that information that's baked into bond prices that's forcing the Fed to continuously wonder whether are they making markets happy with their policy decisions or not. That's not a good thing. Unfortunately, the Fed can no longer be as independent as they would like to be because it's worried about what politicians are doing, what the markets think. And that is in and of itself a symptom of a bigger problem, which is we don't have real rational policy making right now that can give the Fed comfort to focus solely on what their mandate is. And that's look out for inflation and look out for unemployment. We hope that perhaps as we move into the new year, some of these pressures ease off.